Wow. What an entrance. That is what I call an entrance. But before I introduce our special guest today and my friend, I'd like to introduce our chairman of the Latin Chamber of Commerce Board, Andres Estrada.
Thank you, Peter, and appreciate you, Apolo Ohno, for being here with us today. Very much looking forward to hearing your story, and all the work that you've done continues to inspire us throughout these challenging times. So again, thank you for taking the time to meet with Peter and share your story and your news. And with that, I'll turn it over.
Thank you so much, Andres. I appreciate you stopping by with us.
Apolo, we're really excited to have you here. This is really going to help elevate so many different levels of what we're trying to do, just to help put out that positive message to the community. Your story is one, obviously, that has many different layers. So we are, again, looking forward to hearing this and sharing this with our members. So thank you again for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks,
so
Peter.
with that, wow, again, like I said, what an entrance. Just an amazing entrance. Very excited to have my friend Apolo Ohno. I've been telling people that this is more than just the Olympics. This is from medals to business, and the story and the journey that it takes to do these kinds of things. And I know a lot of people are interested in saying it. So with that, thank you so much for being here and always being, available to inspire people. Apolo, welcome to be here.
Thank you, Peter. It's a pleasure to be here, and thanks for taking the time.
Yeah. So as many people will know, Apolo certainly 2 gold medals, 8 medals overall, and something called Dancing with the Stars, which, I definitely want to touch on that. I mean, that's pretty exciting, right? I mean, that's an exciting show.
It's a very fun show. Very different than sport, but it was we could talk about that later, but it was my first time kind of where I think the American public saw me without my helmet and my racing suit. And it was the first time for me in many years that I actually was under, I guess, the spotlight doing something that I was very uncomfortable doing. So, people always think like, oh, I can dance. And, you think that in your head until you get on an actual competition reality show, everything changes. You get 20 million people watching. It was a game changer.
And it still takes tremendous discipline, right?
I mean, I think with anything that you do in life, the smallest of details sometimes matter. And, luckily for me, the world of sport taught me about discipline, about hard work, and those things started to become my identity. And so when I became a part of this show, which I knew nothing about show business, I knew nothing about Hollywood, I knew nothing about production. I just always assumed the harder you work, the greater chance you have at having success. That was just kind of ingrained in my soul. And then I went on the show and I said, well, the only thing I know how to do is work harder than anybody else who's here. And so, that's how we basically approach that challenge.
Excellent. Well, let's start off with your youth. I'm curious, and I know a lot of people are probably curious about your youth.
Yeah. So I grew up in the Seattle region. My father was a Japanese immigrant who came to the United States when he was about 17 years old. He himself was a very inspirational figure and mentor to me my entire life. But my father came to Seattle straight from Japan, didn't speak a word of English, didn't have a dollar to his name, and he just knew how to grind. And I was basically I was brought into this world under circumstances that my dad did not plan for, which I think many people can probably relate. And I was raised in a single parent household, so my father. He decided that it was best for my potential future to be under his household. And so my father began to raise me in the Seattle region and noticed very early on that I had this very addictive personality to sport. I had an incredible amount of energy. He didn't know how to control that energy. And the only way that he knew how to do that was, I'm going to plop this kid into every single after school activity that I can think of.
Wow.
So everything from speed reading to acting to choir to swimming to skating, football, basketball, baseball, everything that he could, just to hopefully just extract some of that energy so that when I got back into the classroom, I wasn't disruptive. And, very early on, I didn't know this when I was a kid, but, we didn't have a lot of money. So I was the one riding my bike to school, to and from. My dad had to work pretty much all hours of the day. And at a very early age, I had to basically learn how to essentially just care for myself, right? And my dad would come home, make sure I have food. But that was really my entrance into the sport, Peter, was the world of roller skating, Friday and Saturday nights, hanging out with
Wow.
my friends. My dad would drop me off at the skating rink, and that was his kind of safe haven to know that I could develop friendships and kind of grow as a young man. He threw me into the sport of swimming. Originally I wanted to play football and I wanted to be a boxer, and he said no to both. And probably for good reason, right? Because I'm not sure I would have lasted in those two sports, but I loved those sports. I thought they were fun. I thought they were very, very, very masculine and strong. And then we saw this wild sport of short track speed skating in 1992. And it was the first time that I even ever heard of short track speed skating. It was the first time that I've ever seen something like it. And so for something like, look, Americans don't typically skate in short track speed skating. It's not a big sport here.
Right.
So I saw this very obscure sport of these athletes racing around this hockey rink, wearing these aerodynamic, they look like superhero outfits, leaning over these impossible angles, going 30, 35 miles an hour on this piece of metal that looked like a samurai sword. So I was hooked very early. And because my dad didn't want me to get involved with anything that involved like very heavy duty head trauma, like boxing or football, I began my life as an athlete. And, there wasn't a lot of speed skating clubs in the Pacific Northwest, but, we found some empty ice hockey time, got out there with my friends from the roller skating rink. And that's how I learned how to skate, by basically mimicking and copying what I saw on television. And that eventually morphed into my father saying, I want to push my son a little bit further into the sport to see how he could do. Did some local competitions, started to win those local competitions. And then from there was the real kind of spark, I think, in me getting invited to this Olympic training program.
Yeah, because I was going to ask you, what's the road to the Olympics? I'm sure a lot of people are curious. How does that road begin?
Yeah, so I think the road to begin is different for everybody. For me specifically, it was at the age of 14 years old, I was invited to be a part of this junior development program in upstate New York, in Lake Placid, New York, all the way on the other side of the country. And so what that would require me to do, Peter, was I would have to actually leave home at the age of 14, fly all the way and live and train in upstate New York, in Lake Placid. Me being the only child in the family, my dad knew that I had a propensity to potentially, because of my extreme personality, when I was focused, I was hyper-focused. But when I wasn't, I was completely off the rails. And so that can be a good thing, right? If you can just make sure you're going towards the right path. So you direct that obsessive nature in the right in the most perspective and positive way. And so my father said, look, Apollo, I want you to be a part of this training program. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity. Nothing like this is ever going to happen again. And at the age of 14, Peter, I didn't know what this meant. I didn't know what it meant to be a part of an Olympic team. I didn't know what it meant to sacrifice and discipline and schedule and all these things that we concentrate on. So instead, I told him, I don't want to go. Instead, I just want to hang out at home. It's the summertime in Seattle. We get like 1 month of sunshine a year, where it's not raining. And my dad was, him being the man of the household, it's like, no, you're going to absolutely take this opportunity. So he packs my bags, drives me to the airport, says, Apollo, I want you to go. If you don't like it after 1 month, you can always come back home. It's okay. However, you got to give this a shot. You got to just give it a shot because you never know what's going to happen. So my father drives off. I see my father drive away. I take my bags. I walk right to the payphone, call my friend and say, hey, Eddie, I'm supposed to go to New York today. I'm not going to go. Can you come pick me up from the airport? And I know all the parents who are watching this are like, I can't believe this kid did this. This is a bad kid at 14. And so at the age of 14, I didn't go to New York. And for the next 9 days, my dad thinks that I'm so angry at him for forcing me to go to New York that I just don't call him until he gets this call from the coach who invited me. Now, again, Peter, they had to pull some strings for me to go because you're supposed to be 15 years old. So they saw potential for me to make the Olympic team in 1998. So this is 1996, 1997 season. He gets the call from the coach. Coach like, Mr. Ohno, look, the offer's so wide open. We pulled some strings to allow your family and your son to be a part of this program. However, just kind of curious if you're still planning on doing this. My dad responds back in his very thick Japanese accent. Oh, you lost my son. We have a big problem, right? Finally finds out which house I was at. He's very upset. Picks me up from that house, explains to me what this incredible opportunity was that I was throwing away. 2 weeks goes by again. And then my father drives me to the airport, packs my bags, does the whole thing, parks the car, walks in with me. And then I noticed that he's actually going to get on the plane and deliver the package, which was me, to the coach. And then we arrive into Albany, New York. We walk into the Olympic Training Center. It was nighttime. Walks right up to the coach, shakes his hand, says, "Mr. Wetland, good luck," and then leaves and goes back to Seattle. And that was,
I gotta say that not only says a lot about you, but it says a lot about your father.
yeah,
It says a lot about him.
yeah, it does. And my father was always one who was just this defining and believing person in my life. So not only was he my best friend, not only was he my coach, my mentor, my father, my confidant, and our relationship, because I was a rambunctious, high energy kid. And it was with every kid and their parents, there's going to be a period of time where the kid thinks they have all the answers.
Yeah, of course.
And the parent is like, okay, like I've been through the same things. And so that period of time was very rocky. My dad saw an opportunity. He didn't know that I was going to be a part of an Olympic team, but he saw a chance. And he knew that that's all that it took sometimes in life, was to take that chance. And he didn't want me to throw it away. And so when I was there at the Olympic Training Center, at the age of 14, it didn't take me long for me to recognize both, I think, the talent that I had for the sport, but also that the talent would only take me so far. If I really, really wanted to do something different and something more, it would require me to dedicate a part of myself that I didn't know yet existed. And that was the tutelage of these coaches that were around me. And I can't say enough about that mentorship and that those coaches who basically told me, I believe in you even when you don't believe in yourself yet. Maybe you're too young to recognize your own confidence and your potential, but I'm going to help you get there. And then literally 8 months later, Peter, I was standing on top of the podium at the World Team Trials. And so I went from this unknown kid in the sport to skyrocketing in performance, and now technically being the captain of this U.S. World Team, where guys were 35, 36 years old, and they've been skating for 20 plus years. Here I was, this 15-year-old punk kid who didn't know, left from right, but I had so much raw talent. And that's what began my entrance into the world of this sport. And it was, it's been up and down since, but I'm incredibly blessed to be able to have so many great teachers and mentors in my life throughout that process. And sport itself was such a tremendous teacher.
And so that's interesting. So how are you using what you learned on that journey in the Olympics? How are you using that now in such a high level in business and in humanity?
That's a great question. So, I think a lot of the life lessons that I've been, lucky enough to be able to be exposed to through sport is, I think the power of resilience, the ability to pivot, right? So actually when we go around the corner, it's actually called a pivot on one leg. And I think in life, and everyone is experiencing this even today, and I'll use right now as an example, right? All of us, 2020, January, we had these big goals. We knew this was going to be a great year, the start of a new decade. We had personal goals, we have family goals, we have career goals. And all of a sudden, like this, something out of the complete blue, right? That no one was prepared for. Shutdowns happen, furloughs happen, delays happen. And we are forced to have to pivot and reinvent not only the way that we operate, but the way that we take our daily acceptance towards gratitude, towards how we approach challenges and problems and turning them opportunities. And sport forces you to do that, forces you to take, look, here's the deck of cards that you are dealt. You still have to perform. You can't delay this till tomorrow. You have to figure out a way, no matter what that is. And so the human condition and the human experience, that's why I love this country so much, because there's so many people from all walks of life that have made it through sport, through business, through sheer willpower, through grind, through consistency, and all these things. So when I talk about what have I learned from sport that I carry into my life on a daily basis, I developed these things called the 5 golden principles. And these are the things that I've kind of adhered to. They were like, they were kind of my etched into my soul at a very early age. And the older that I got and started to really repeat these on a daily basis, the more they started to become my superpowers. And so the first golden principle is gratitude. And I just believe that, no matter what situation that you are in, no matter how hard things get, no matter how difficult or challenging or bleak they may seem, your gratitude for your own personal ability to wake up in the morning, the things that you have, whether it's your family, whether it is your friends, whether it's a chance that you can still continue to push on, that has to be an authentic conversation you have with yourself on the daily. And it's difficult, right? Because we are distracted 1,000 times a day by these things. So the first one is gratitude. The second one is give. And so that can be in the form of servant leadership back to your communities. Your family is your rock. That is what's going to get you up when you don't even want to. And also giving yourself a chance and opportunity. Sometimes we are so self-sabotaging in our own career paths because we subconsciously are afraid of what we could actually become. And I don't want people to recognize that. You know, we are actually unlimited in our potential, but it takes a consistent daily grind to be able to mitigate some of those potentially self-sabotaging habits that we've developed for whatever reason in our upbringing. So gratitude, giving. The third one is grit. And I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Life is going to be hard, but life is also really beautiful. And you have to recognize that some days things come easy and some days things don't come at all. And what are you going to do knowing that even though you have that pen in your hand and you are writing your own playbook, you are writing your own script for your life, it may not go to plan. And what you do have control and power over is how you perceive those challenges and how you perceive them as growth opportunities as an individual. So having that grit, we all have that person in our life that we say, that guy has grinded it out no matter what came his way. And the beautiful thing is we as human beings all contain this within us. It is a part of the human condition. And all of us have this. We just don't know when these things turn on and off. The fourth one is kind of gearing up your personal expectation. We've got gratitude, giving, we've got grit. The fourth one is gearing up your personal expectation. In sport, I had personal expectations for myself about how I carried myself. That was my baseline bare minimum. And when you want to make significant, drastic changes and progress in our life, you have to also gear up your personal expectation. What do you deem as acceptable in terms of the way that you operate, in terms of how many hours that you work, in terms of what you're focused on? Whatever that is, your personal expectations have to be elevated in order for you to reach the next level. And I think that we all can recognize that. And the last one is called go. You got to get into action. You can plan all you want. You can create paralysis by analysis. At the end of the day, you got to go stick your foot in the water to check the temperature. You got to go see what it's like. You have to move and get into action. And you can have the most incredible degrees and academic studies in your life, but life is different. Life isn't by a textbook. It's not predetermined. Your life is going to be twists and turns. And that's the beauty of it. That's what makes it exciting. That's what makes it always on a daily basis so different. And so those are my 5 golden principles. I'll kind of repeat them, Peter, because they, to me, have been so kind of empowering. Gratitude, giving, grit, gearing up your personal expectation, and getting into action.
I think it's absolutely phenomenal. And the passion in which I visually see you have for those 5 principles is amazing to me. And I know it's going to inspire at least one, if not many more people by hearing them, because they are great principles to live by. And I think that not only will they help you achieve success, but more importantly, to help you achieve happiness. Happiness. I just see a lot of people walking around, and some of them are successful. They're not happy. And so I think some of those 5 principles certainly is a way to achieve not only great success, but happiness. So, you know, with you've accomplished so much. I'm just curious, like, and you've done it at a young age. Like, how do you set goals, and what are your goals now?
Well, thank you. And I'm glad you brought up the happiness part. You know, happiness is sometimes it feels elusive. You know, for me personally, I was blessed enough to have a tremendous career in sport. I never would have dreamed that I had that ability to go to 3 Olympic Games and win medals for this country. You know, I think that I'm driven by the way that I make goals, and the way that I'm driven today is something I think that is more than myself. And I found that, you know, when I retired 10 years ago, Peter, I spent a decade searching for that transition. What was that going to be like when my sole identity was the sport of short track speed skating, was the Olympics? That was who I was. 10 years later, going in circles for a career is not exactly something I want to do. Right? It doesn't actually mesh. And so I found, particularly in the last 3.5 years, that my love for connecting with other people, my love for inspiring, and I don't want to say the word teaching, but hopefully guiding people to help recognize their own inner potential and unlocking that gold medal mindset, right? So while many of us we don't have any aspiration to dreams to go to the Olympics, but we're still human beings. And the things that we deem to be important, whether it's for ourselves personally, whether it's for our communities, whether it's for your beliefs, you can have control over that. And you can have control over the mechanism, the place that we always fail to look, which is right between our own ears. And that mindset is so important. So my dream and my life mission now is to help people, to help businesses, help organizations unlock that gold medal mindset. It's always been there. I'm just helping you unsheath it. I'm helping you polish that diamond and show you that there's so many facets of who you are, to recognize those strengths, to recognize that you can have empathy, you can have belief, you can seek fulfillment and happiness. You're chasing.
Is this part of the gold medal mind? Because I wanted to ask you about the gold medal mind, because I know you bring that up.
Yeah, it is. And so, this kind of gold medal mind is, it's a philosophy that, look, I've won many races in my life. I have lost so many more, right? And I think we fail to recognize that when we see someone who's hyper successful, or we see someone who is a superstar athlete, or we see someone who is an entertainer. We don't recognize that there's been many failures across that path. It is those failures and within them that we define and identify ourselves. What you do in the face of failure and challenge and chaos, it can really define who you are. And the beautiful thing is our perception. I always call this, like, when we're going through life, you can be in the driver's seat, you can be in the passenger seat. And many of us always feel like we're always in the passenger seat. Like life is just happening to us. We have no control over it. We're looking out, through the lens of our windshield, and we can't control anything.
I'm no good in that seat.
Yeah. And then so there's others who are in the driver's seat who say, you know what? I still can't control what's coming at me, but how I perceive them and how I react to them is within my control. And if it is within my control, you better make sure that I'm going to react and respond in a way that is going to give me the greatest possible chance of achieving success, having in growth and happiness, and moving forward. So, what drives me and the goals that I set today, I set daily goals on a microcycle. So when I wake up, I do a little bit of writing. What do I want to achieve today? And then I've got, my kind of quarterly and then yearly goals. But underlying the principles all along is this belief that I just want to help people, and I want to help organizations, and I want to help companies and people just recognize that they too can optimize. They can have greater growth. If you can fix the things that you have at home, you're going to come into your workspace with a greater amount of engagement, with a greater amount of challenge seeking opportunity. You're going to be more willing to take on these tasks, and you're going to say, hey, look, COVID-19 happens. We're opening back up. It's going to be a new paradigm of how we do that. And that's okay. We will adapt and move. And I'm going to polish that windshield. I'm going to recognize that I'm in the driver's seat, and I have control over the steering wheel, and I can hit the gas, and I can let off when time is needed.
So I always like to ask this question of what I call influencers, which is exactly what you are. You're an influencer. If you could have a message on a billboard for 5 years, what would you put on that billboard?
I think the message would be believe. Believe in yourself, believe in your family, believe in those around you, believe in your community. And if you are a faith-driven person, believe in God. And I think that those things are intrinsically tied. There's a great book that I really love and go back to by a man named Viktor Frankl. And the book title is called Man's Search for Meaning. And he talks a lot about that, suffering equals despair minus meaning, right? So people who are suffering don't feel like they have purpose. When you have purpose and you have belief and you have meaning, you can overcome anything. The atrocities from, World War II, the situation that has happened even more recently in all of these communities around the world. When you have belief and you have meaning, you can overcome anything. And I think so many people in this world today fail to recognize why they are here. What is your purpose? It doesn't have to be some incredible, I'm going to help the world and I'm going to cure this and do that. It can be something simple as, I believe I'm here to raise an amazing family. I want to make sure that I am the rock. I am the strength, that no matter how hard it gets, I can still smile at my kids, at my family, at my community, and I can weather the storm, because I know that if I can show that, on the other side is light at the end of the tunnel. And so on that billboard, I want people to believe in themselves. And we all know what it feels like when we have that little bit of confidence. And it's like this domino effect, right? And it starts to roll, and then it starts to get really, really, really fun. But until you can get that small spark and begin that fire, you're not going to recognize that you have that power within.
Yeah. And certainly some of these principles that you're talking about, so powerful for today, right? I mean, in these uncertain times, how have you been managing during these uncertain times, and how quick things change? And I'm also curious, not only have you been managing now with that, but are there any connections between your training, your Olympic training, and also being able to handle moments like we're going through right now?
Yeah. So, when we started the lockdown on March 7th, pretty early, and very early on, I was like, okay, here we go. Now is my opportunity to write and finish this book I always wanted to do. And so I dove head first. I thought I was going to write 2 books by the end of the quarantine. That did not happen, right? It was very clear that it was a challenge, right? And the challenge, and what I recognized, that I really missed just connecting with people, sharing a drink, having a coffee, seeing the energy one-on-one. And Zoom was great, and it provided a great alternative. It's not the same. It's just not the same. And so I had to have this belief that, hey, we will get back to it. And when we do, I'm going to come out of this thing. So what I did was, I actually set this a while ago, but it was June 11th. I said, okay, June 11th was in my head, my target date. I said, this was several months ago. I said, who do you want to be on June 11th? When you come up out of this thing and it's ready to go back, how are you going to be able to recognize that you've grown, you've had progress, and you've been able to adapt to the situation? And that put me in a different frame of mind and a mindset to move forward. And the things that I started to do that were really important, Peter, was setting a routine. Because I noticed that because I was working so much from home and I wasn't traveling like I normally do, I was being thrown out of my routine. I wasn't used to waking up and then, I've got 12 hours during the day plus, but if those aren't effective deep work hours, maybe I'm only working 3 or 4 hours during the day. That doesn't make sense. So I started to really compartmentalize and started to create a routine for myself. This is my morning routine. I will stick to it like a ritual. It will derive both the way that I create a mindset to prep me for the day. And some people do this by commuting into work, right? When you go to the office, you would use that 15, 30, half an hour as your kind of mental prep going, and that's your warm up for the day. And then when you come home, that's when you disengage. That's when you leave the problems at home, at work, and you start to be with your family, and you're actually in your own personal sanctuary. But now we don't have that. The lines have been blurred. So it was very important for me to recognize that the routine that I know that I was so strong in my life as an Olympic athlete can be transferred over here, and I could derive strength and confidence out of that. So no matter how bad my day was the rest of the day, in the morning, I could own that piece. I could own those moments. It created a sense of control and confidence that no matter what happened, that was my small little micro wins throughout the day. That was the first part. And the second part was, for me personally, I work really well when I move my body. So whether it's like a simple walk, whether it's a run, a jog, just doing push-ups, whatever that is, I work better when I've got this kind of blood flow in my body. And when I didn't, I noticed that I wasn't the same person, even communicating via digital or on the phone, whatever it was. And so those are the things that I think I try to do on a daily basis, was to recognize, am I getting the right type of sleep? Am I eating properly so that I can perform well during the day? How are my energy levels? How engaged am I? Do I want to do this? And sometimes I didn't. And I think that's okay. And I need to recognize, to disengage for a second, right? And we call it getting up onto the balcony, right? Because every day it seems like you're just putting out fires, and these things are happening. And you kind of lose sight of the overall picture of the landscape until you disengage for a second. You go up onto the balcony, metaphorically speaking, and you have a survey of what's in front of you. And you say, okay, I get it. I was fighting this battle here, but I actually should be allocating my time and resources over here. And that's when you can make proper executive decisions in that time frame. And getting up on the balcony is something that I learned when I went back to school last year at Wharton, but something that I think about often, right? Because being a human being, it's very easy for us to get in the fight and stay in the fight the whole time and lose sight of, what is the actual long-term goal here? What is the impact that we're actually seeking in the next 6 months, right? It's June right now. Who do we want to be in October? What do we want to be in December? and looking at that and making sure that you're not losing sight, because that will get you up on a daily basis.
Yeah, that's inspirational, and I certainly appreciate that. In closing, Apollo, what do you have to say to folks out there? What's your message? What's your belief right now?
Yeah, my message to everyone, and particularly, who
and Apollo, our audience is mostly business owners,
Mm.
but there's going to be family members. Some of those folks that you talked about that maybe don't see hope. This is the moment. This is the moment for them, I think, to get up, to go.
That's right. And I think that's, look, my message to those people is sometimes it takes us to get knocked down so hard and so often for us to truly recognize the real strength and potential that we have. At any moment of those times when you are knocked down, it is about how you get back up. What changes do you want to create on a daily basis? If you truly want something, articulate that to yourself, write that down, understand that we are moving into a new, different era in how we conduct business. And you may have these incredible challenges that need attention today, and you got to adhere to those attention. But you also got to recognize that you have the ability within yourself, the way that you perceive these challenges. You can look at them as being these crippling, problems and issues that you'll never get over, or you can say, this is an opportunity for me to show my true strength. The learning lesson is on the other side. How do I get creative? What can I do today? What can I do on a daily basis? Am I tired on a daily basis? Am I not getting enough sleep? Am I not getting, am I not moving my body in the right way? Maybe you don't have time for those things. Maybe you are truly on the emergency line at the very end. And if you are, you still have the ability here. This is what's going to take you further. There has been people and time over generation that have faced the most incredible amount of challenges. And all of us have this ability within ourselves, but it's got to come from within. So we are human beings, and we have a preconditioned way in which we operate on a daily basis. They always say you can't teach an old dog new tricks, right? We know now that we can. Human beings can change well into their 70s and 80s if they want to. And it takes that want. And so what I urge people to do is, things aren't going to happen overnight. It's going to take a consistency, right? I call it self one and self two. When you want to make a big change in your life, self one, which has been the previous 30, 50 years of your life, which you've been conditioned to do on a daily basis, is always going to be bringing you back. This is what feels normal. This is what feels comfortable. This is the zone that you are used to being in. And if you want to make change, you got to get out of that zone. You got to go from green into the yellow. Red is too far because you're not absorbing the information, and it's just too much to take. But yellow is a sweet spot. And so going from this kind of fixed mentality into the growth state to recognize that you are not fixed, you can mold and shape and change and adapt to anything and anywhere, just like right now. Right? People always say human beings aren't supposed to be in the desert, right? 107, 115, 120, that's too hot for people. Human beings can adapt to anything. But it takes consistency of repetitions, just like you're in the gym. My technique wouldn't improve overnight until I put in the work. You got to put in the work, and eventually self one becomes self two, and now this is your new normal. And once that's the new normal is when magic actually happens, because you've made the change and you've created a habit. That habit now has become a part of your identity. And now you know nothing less. Your personal expectations have been geared up. The things that you find to be the most important are here. This becomes your baseline. But like anything, you got to put in the work.
I'll tell you what, you throw in that with the 5 principles, you're on your way to success. So that is awesome. That was inspirational. And I highly recommend all those companies out there that are watching right now, you need to find a way to get Apollo into your building, talking to your employees and inspiring them. Apollo, that's kind of what you do these days, right? You do a little bit of that?
I do. Yeah. My
How
love
can they
and
reach you? Do you have a website?
I have a website, apoloohno.com. I'm on all social at Apolo Ohno, but you can find more information about at Apolo Ohno.
Apollo, I can't thank you enough for spending a little time with me today, inspiring folks. It means a lot. It says a lot about your character, and your dad did a great job. My father was my best man at my wedding for a reason.
Amazing. That's
and
amazing.
Our stories are very similar. And so I appreciated you opening up and sharing that. And I just want to thank everybody for coming in today, enjoying this episode of Influencers, where we bring you people that have an opportunity to influence your life, our communities, our states, and our great country. Until we see each other again, thank you for being here today. Thank you, Apollo.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.